Hello. Welcome to another cruiser inspection in World of Warships. And we're looking at the Tier 10 steel cruiser, the Svea. What is the Svea? Well, it's a very interesting little boat. Um, it's a very interesting blend of destroyer, light, and heavy cruiser, kind of all in one package. You're in some ways, you're an ultralight cruiser in your, gun caliber. Your citadel plating is, Smolensk level, 70 millimeters. You're made out of paper. However, your actual hull armor profile is a lot closer to a heavy cruiser than it is to a light cruiser. You get 30 millimeter deck and midsection. You get 25 nose and ass, a bit of 25 upper belt. Uh, and you're incredibly small. You're also incredibly fast when you're speed boosting. You also have daring smoke screens. You also have Gdansk radar with improved duration, but the same reload. You also have an improved rate of healing that's typically only found on gunboat destroyers. So you also have basically Ostergotland torpedoes. Ostergotland, whatever. Torps. One rack of four on each side. So, what is the playstyle of Svea? Well, there's kind of two playstyles that Svea excels at. One is aggressing onto caps, or in this case, buff points in arms race. And that is because you have this 15 to 20-second duration radar, depending on how you build for it, that reloads in less than a minute, depending on how you build for it. So you're basically, especially, you're a bit less powerful in arms race because buffs just require, one frame of capping to get them. But especially in domination game mode, well, you're just a complete no-go zone for any DD. Not only are you a complete no-go zone for the torpedo boats, obviously, I mean, every cruiser fucks on torp boats. It's, we got to do that. Um, you're actually a complete no-go zone for even gunboats, and that is down to this, borderline heavy cruiser plating. Very, very few gunboats can actually fuck with this thing because even the ones that maybe have way better DPM or very good DPM, they can't really pen Svea anywhere with HE, right? Um, when you see there, the Shima tried to get the cap. We radar him. We take almost half of his HP pool. He gets away, but we're going to be able to do that 5 times a game. And that's why Svea really excels in domination game mode. Particularly in domination game mode, that's kind of your use case one, which is just I mean, honestly, about a 6 to 8 minute, depending on how the timing works out, total no cap zone for red DDs, which is obviously a super fucking fun interaction for the enemy destroyer. They basically have to make two choices. They can butt their head against the wall and constantly lose HP to Svea. Now, your DPM isn't super high, so you don't like pop a radar and insta kill a DD like a Minotaur can or something like that, obviously. But you're just a no go zone. Every time they get radar, they're going to lose 5 to 15,000 HP, depending on how effectively they're juking and how well you're aiming. Super aids interaction, honestly. And then the other strong use case scenario that Svea has is just kind of permanently stalling a push. And that's kind of down to how few battleships and almost no cruisers, as insane as that sounds, can really fuck with this thing. Uh, BBs can't fuck with it for a couple of reasons. One, your citadel is barely above water. Two, the ship is incredibly tiny and incredibly fast. And three, obviously, it has the short burst smoke. So this all combines to like every time you see this ship and you shoot at it, you do almost no damage. Now, there's a caveat to that. There's a few BBs that completely shit on this thing. But you typically almost no damage. The combination of its maneuverability, speed, armor profile, hull type, how tiny it is, etc., all lead to your salvos typically being very ineffective when you shoot at it in most BBs. And then obviously you shoot at it and it instantly gets to smoke and farm you for a minimum of those 20 seconds while you're bloom spotted. So pushing into this thing when it's on a flank, it's one of the greatest flank stallers in the entire game because it has survivability utility to stall BBs and it has radar utility to deter destroyers from pushing into it. You only have a 0.3 kilometer detection gap. You have 9.3 stealth, you have 9 km radar, it reloads every minute. So if a DD wants to help its BBs by hard lighting this thing, kind of a horrible task that's being presented to them, really. And then if BBs want to push it without spotting, even in a best case scenario where the BB pushing Svea cannot be lit by anyone but the Svea, it's still complete AIDS because all this thing has to really do is just get its speed boost up, and you almost never hit it. Even if you do hit it, you almost always just overpen it or even bounce if your gun caliber is not, sufficiently high. And it's got to smoke. It only has to go 25 seconds of a gap between smoke, unless, of course, you run the based 4.AA skill like I am here. And then there are situations where you basically are literally never without the smoke, and the radar reloads in 30 seconds. Very funny and very cool. So there's another class. Now, those are kind of like the two play styles that Svea excels in. There's also a bit of an interesting, I think, bad game design dynamic. We talk about this game being rock, paper, scissors between the classes, but what I really typically dislike is when there's kind of micro niche mini classes, right? So, like, there's BBs that are DPM BBs, and there's BBs that are AP focused clicker BBs, right? There are some BBs have DPM, most don't, right? So like DPM BBs would be a kind of micro, a mini inner class of BBs, right? You have open water cruisers, you have utility cruisers, you have smoke farm cruisers, right? And then we have a class in this game that you can call large cruiser or super heavy cruiser or battle cruiser. These are the cruisers that have, the intermediate gun caliber, and they take 60-second fires, and they typically have weak platings but decent armor in some place. And these cruisers get bullied so, I'm gonna say it, egregiously hard by the Svea. Ships like Puerto Rico, Alaska, Marseille, Yoshino, these kind of cruisers, because Svea is not really an ultralight cruiser. It has platings that you typically find on heavy cruisers. It's kind of a heavy cruiser, light cruiser, armor hybrid. So, because it has 25 millimeter as its lowest plating, if you do not have 380 millimeter gun caliber, you do not overmatch the Svea. The Svea also has exceptionally good both forward and rearward firing angles. So, if you were in any of these super heavy cruisers that take 60-second fires, also which conveniently usually have bad deck platings or bad nose and ass platings, the Svea is pure AIDS. There's no other way to put it. This ship is giga AIDS to play against now, it's a bit less AIDS to play against in the few that have improved pen angles. So that would be like Stalingrad, and Alaska and Puerto Rico. Because if the Svea fucks its angling very slightly, then all of a sudden you can pen it. However, the firing angles are so good that you can pretty easily get 2 out of 3 turrets in the fight at all times, and then just marginally wiggle to get 3 guns in the fight. 3 turrets in the fight at all times in Svea, and then slightly angled to bounce even improved ricochet angle. Heavy, super heavy cruiser AP. So Svea really, really, really like aggressively bullies these ships because it has pretty good fire starting. It has pretty decent DPM. It's small and hard to hit, and it cannot be overmatched by these super heavy cruiser, large cruiser ships. Another ship class that this thing really bullies are ships like Zal, as you see here, ships like Hindenburg, Des Moines, Salem. Cruisers with 30 millimeter and less extremities that are not incredibly fast. A ship like Henry does very well against Svea because Henry's very hard to hit. The problem is, when you pop the speed boost on this fucking thing, you see here, we're actively maneuvering back and forth, and we're staying at about 40 knots, right? In a straight line, we go about 46 knots with speed boost up, which is about 12 to 15 knots faster than a lot of these heavy cruisers with 30 millimeter or less platings. So, yeah, well, you don't have the greatest shell arcs in Svea. They're not bad. But you're almost impossible to hit, and they're not that hard to hit. and you pen them everywhere. So these ships, Hindenburg is probably like one of the most horrific examples. Fighting a Svea in Hindenburg is a just horrific experience because you just really cannot ever hit the fucking thing, and it's going 12 knots, 13 knots faster than your Hindenburg, and it just is beaming you with HE. It pens you everywhere. It starts fires. You barely hit any shells, right? So Svea really bullies DDs because the radar is oppressive. You're basically a 6 to 8 minute no-go zone. It really bullies the unarmored cruisers, and it really bullies the large cruisers. My question for the development team at Wargaming is, were those the classes that needed to be bullied more? And I asked the same thing of Utrecht. Like, and Utrecht bullies kind of the exact same type of ships. Now, not the destroyers anywhere as near as much. Yes, it beams them if they're spotted, but obviously Utrecht can't spot DDs for itself. But, like, do those classes need to be bullied? Do those classes need to be bullied more? And I said this about Utrecht, and I'm going to say it about Svea. What I would rather see from these ships is floatier shells, less HE pen, and maybe even more DPM to compensate. Because Svea bullies battleships, and Utrecht also bullies battleships, and I'm 1,000,000,000% fucking okay with any cruiser that bullies shitty BB players. I'm so okay with it, it's not even funny. Make a tier 15 cruiser in a tier 10 slot to clown on BBs, and I'm down to clown, buddy. But the part where this thing just completely shits on DDs, and again, specifically stealth torp DDs who have to impact the game by creeping up on people and spotting people. Yes, it is tough to fight this thing in a gunboat without super good speed like Marceau or Kleb, but stealth torp boats, unarmored cruisers, and large cruisers, like, these are the ships that are down bad. Like, these ships are down fucking bad as micro classes in the game. And, like, we just keep making cruisers that fuck on them. Like, fighting this thing in a Yoshino or, like, a Marseille, like, especially a Marseille or something, is just such an unbelievable, or like in a Des Moines, you're positioned on a rock in a Des Moines, and this thing is kiting you at like 12, 13 kilometers. It's just suffering, man. It's just such fucking suffering to play against this thing. Yeah, it's turbo aids to push this thing in a BB. I don't care. We don't care about that. Fuck BB players at this point. Fuck BB game design, not necessarily the players. But the thing is just like a literal wall. Like, it is a wall if you're in a DD. You can't play around the radar at all. Even if you get in a fight, like, at least a ship like Gdansk, right? Gdansk, you could kind of say this is like a cruiser version of Gdansk. Not really, but I can kind of see where people's heads are at. It's kind of like Gdansk and Ragnar and Daring, like, fused into a cruiser, I guess you could say. Gdansk is also, like, a 5 to 6 minute, like 5 to 8 minute no-go zone on caps with DDs. But you know what the difference is? Gdansk can't always smoke. That's a big difference. Another difference is Gdansk is pretty easy to hit in your DD. And, like, yeah, it's aids. Like, if you're in a Daring trying to fight for a cap and a Gdansk is radaring you every minute, I'm not going to pretend that's not horrible game design and stupid and aids and broken. But, like, every time the Gdansk radars you, he has to shoot at you, and you can spot him, and then, like, you shoot back and you do good damage. But, like, because the Svea has these light, heavy cruiser platings, like, unless you're in a handful of, like, 5 or 6 DDs in tier 10, you don't really, like, even damage it back. So, like, at least with Gdansk, you can, like, cope into, like, trading it, right? Like, oh, it radar my Daring. Oh, but I did 6k back to it. Yeah, I lost 10, but I can heal. And yeah, it's AIDS. I'm probably never going to cap. But, like, I accomplished something. Yay for me. You're coping your way out of it. But, like, you can't even cope out of, like, trading into Svea in any DD. Because it doesn't matter, right? It just doesn't matter what you do. If you're in any of these cruisers that aren't super fast or have, like, railgun sap, like, Ven does very good against Svea. Ven is one of the few cruisers that Svea pens everywhere that does very well against it. But a lot of these cruisers, just like, man, they don't do anything to this ship, and it just farms them, and they can shoot back, but they don't hit it. it's just honestly, dude, it's just such aids to play against this thing in like half the ships in this game, including most BBs. However, it must be said that there are a couple of BBs that totally negate everything I just said about Svea's survivability. And that would be SAP BBs. In particularly the usual suspect, Ledgebon Columbo, and the 35 millimeter overmatchers, Satsuma, Shikishima in comp. And that is because the deck, the roof of Svea's Citadel, is 35 millimeters. Now, this is why you're astonishingly tankier than you have any right to be against even BBs with like 30 mil overmatch. When you go bow or stern in, it's hard for them to shit on you because they can just overmatch and get full pens maybe, but you're tiny. However, in comp, Shikishima, Satsuma, they deck Citadel you. So you go bow into those fucking things, and any shell entering your ship between, I don't know, probably about the tip of your bow to, the last turret on your ship, only about 90% of your hull length, can just randomly Citadel you. And these ships obviously also have like 20,000 damage per shell. So when that shell goes in and overmatches your Citadel deck, you literally lose half of your fucking HP, which is very cool. And then, of course, the SAP BBs for the sole reason that they Citadel you with SAP. Now, having only 70 millimeter plating on the side does mean that the ships with 419, 420 millimeter HE Citadel you in general. So those are the two kind of class you kind of struggle with. Now, you don't have a Hydra on Svea. So, you might think that Svea doesn't do very well against submarines. However, it is my experience that Svea suffers less to subs than the vast majority of cruisers. And that is down to you get 8 km airstrike planes. Now, if Svea had ship-based depth charges, it'd be pure AIDS and you'd never be able to fuck with a sub in any way, shape, or form. However, having those plain ASW means that you get spotted. You instantly use one of 5 short duration radars. The submarine will be spotted almost immediately by your radar. You will get 1, maybe 2 salvos in on the sub, and then, because you spotted the sub at 9, and you have 8 km airstrike range, typically when you spot subs in Svea, it's because they're pushing into you, you can almost always actually airstrike them with the planes. We talk a lot about how, and you see here, this is the kind of interaction I'm talking about. Look at these firing angles. Look at the bottom left. Look at the fucking firing angles on this thing. These are auto bounce, right? Look at the angle I'm at this Yoshino. What does he do? He can't use AP against me. I'll auto bounce it because he doesn't overmatch me. I pen basically his entire ship, right? Aside from the torp protection because that doesn't count as damage. But I pen almost his entire ship. I have good fire starting. He has no fire prevention. He takes 60-second fires. This is the kind of ship a Yoshino he has to run away. Like, I will bully this kid so fucking hard. It's not even funny. It's actually crazy how hard Svea bullies ships like Yoshino. But back to the sub, we often talk about how in Gdansk, one of the downsides of it is subs kind of fuck your utility over, which is a valid criticism of the Gdansk. Not really a okay, it's not a criticism of Gdansk. It's a criticism of the shitty design of subs, right? But in Gdansk, when you get spotted and you radar and it's a sub, it's literally a wasted radar, right? Because you are leading the charge, you radar, there's almost guaranteed not a BB within 2 kilometers behind you to airstrike the sub, right? So you radar the sub, you maybe get 1 or 2 salvos off for like 2 to 3k, the sub dives and you're down to radar. The difference with Svea is having those 8 km airstrikes. You almost always, when you radar that sub, is it a wasted radar? I guess, because you're probably not going to do big damage with the guns, right? However, it's not really a wasted radar, because I would say about 80 to 90% of the time you radar the sub, you're pushing, it's pushing, you can get planes off on it, right? So that is a mega ability that Svea has over almost all cruisers, is that the hit to your utility when you quote-unquote waste it to spot a sub is not that brutal. Also, of course, you go 46 knots. So there's only a couple of subs, and yes, it does pain me that I even have to say there are some subs that can keep up with you. Almost no subs can keep up with you when you speed boost and run away. And they can't spot you because your air detect, well, your sub detect is about 6'9", right? And you in order for them to push into 6'9" while you're going 46 knots is like pretty impossible if you're running away, right? So we're trying to finish the sub, right? But and we end up getting him. But you can see, like, you know, it's a lot easier to fuck with subs in this thing than most cruisers, which is kind of surprising because typically cruisers without hydro really suffer heavy against subs. Now, a ship like Montana, of course, I'll open water this thing for quite a while. And you see there, my DD just got floods on him, so now we're trying to get the permafires. And speaking of floods, that's kind of like the true value of Svea torps, right? I mean, having, what is it, about 50k torp alpha per side of your ship, obviously, like, that can never deter a BB from rushing you. You know what I mean? Like, if a full HP, Vermont is sprinting at your ship, like, you're not going to save yourself with torps like you could in Minnow or Brisbane or Genan, right? Instant double fire. God bless no fire prevention BBs, especially in Svea. No fire prevention BBs is what you love to see. Um, but the torps really are, because they're super fast with a good reload and good range. They're just really, really nice for popping out DCP on people. It's kind of like the true value that they have. Now, we can kind of go back a little bit. I know we're not really talking about the games we're in, but we kind of went over the two ways you can play the ship. Aggro being a no-go zone for DDs, farming BBs and large ships a bit. But now let's talk a bit about the game quality experience that I have experienced in the Svea. I think I've got over 50 games in this thing. I think we're at 50 or maybe a bit more. There are two kinds. And if you watch the stream, I say this every time I play the ship. Every time I play the ship, there's two kinds of games that happen in the Svea. There is the replay we just looked at. Remember, we're looking at back-to-back replays, right? We played the last game. We immediately played this game. These games happened consecutively. Games like the last game that are, well, a fucking snooze fest. This is one of the most boring cruisers to play in the entire game. Sometimes. Sometimes. And the last game was one of those sometimes, where you're just like randomly farming meaningless damage, or the enemy team runs away, or your team wins the flank. And then there's the second kind of game. And we're in the second kind of game, baby. And that is, well, it hasn't been so far. So far, it's kind of been one of the first kind of games. We haven't even lost HP. But this game is rapidly going to turn into the second kind of Svea game that exists, which is an absolute turbo sweat fucking fiesta, buddy. I've never played a ship that is both the most mind-numbingly boring ship in the game and the most sweaty, high-intensity ship in the entire game. And the reason why the Svea is so sweaty is there's always something you can do. Now, the situation might not have DDs present, so you can't fight DDs. There might not be subs, so you can't airdrop subs. There might not be BBs, so you're not dodging and torping. However, in a lot of games in Svea, like this game is one, you get into a situation where there's constantly destroyers in your mouth. There's constantly BBs and cruisers in your mouth. You're getting cross-torp. You're getting cross-fired. You're getting airstriked. Everything is happening. And there's so many goddamn buttons to press, dude. Look at all these fucking buttons on the bottom of my screen. And you're just mashing the heel and then popping a smoke because the BB just shot and you want to farm the BB. And then, oh no, the DD stepped on the cap and we got to radar the DD. And now we got to switch guns to the DD. And oh no, both the DDs torped us. And we got to dodge that. And oh, we just hit a torp on the BB. So now we got to stop shooting the DD and go for the fucking permafire. And oh no, there's a sub. So now we have to like sprint out of the way and dodge the sub torps. Oh, now we got to ASW the sub because we have airstrike range. Oh, look at this. We're getting cross-torped by the fucking Shima. Oh, look at this. The tier 87 Viasma is pushing us, even though he's in a tier 9. And our team is selling. And the takeaway from this game is when Svea games are sweaty is when the team is selling. Now, some cruisers are sweaty when the team is selling, right? But a lot of cruisers don't become sweaty just because your team sells the game, right? You know, a ship that I would say of that is like a Hindenburg, a Venezia, right? Like these ships are never really that sweaty. You just kind of keep doing your thing, right? Like you're in a Lighthouse Ven, you're in a Hindenburg, you're in a Lighthouse Salem, one of these kinds of cruisers, Smoke Minotaur, Genan. It's like the game doesn't become sweaty just because your team starts to throw, because like at the end of the day you can't like run in and do something about it. The only way the throw can be turned around via your game impact is you have to keep impacting the game the way you've been impacting the game, right? If that's in a Hindenburg or a Lighthouse cruiser or something like that, a smoke farming cruiser, you impact the game. And you see here the 2.4 AA skill giving us back the speed boost instantly. Mega skill, by the way. I almost won't be caught dead on it in any cruiser with more than 3 buttons at the bottom of the screen. I'm probably taking 4 AA skill. Um, so what's the difference with Svea? Well, it's the fact that like you can do so many different things. Um, if you are, my team is throwing this game, we still should win. Like we still should obviously win this game. My sub just has to like help us with the gearing and the Van Contorn, and then we probably can just win the game if these guys stay alive. But basically, my whole team's gonna sell while I'm, clawing to try to get some damage and bring the game back, and it's not gonna matter, right? We're gonna lose. Um, but in a typical situation, like if I was in, you know, a Hindenburg in this situation or a Lighthouse Cruise in this situation, I'd probably just stay around F4 and farm, right? But the Holland is torping and spotting my cruisers. So if I can run across the map and radar and get us the Holland kill, now all of a sudden we can consolidate our position here and fight them exclusively from the south of the map, and we're not getting cross torp, right? Now this isn't something you would ever try to do in a ship like a normal kiting cruiser or normal smoke farm cruiser, even a lot of radar cruisers, because you don't have the speed to get over there, right? It's the fact that you've got the speed, you've got the torps, you've got the radar, you've got the ASW, you got the smoke. So you can just always do something. And because you can always do something, you find yourself trying to do everything in this Svea. Because that's kind of like part of the point of playing it, is it can kind of do everything. But like, we went over here to help with the Holland, and the gearing stepped on the caps, and we slammed on the brakes so the gearing would run into us and we could radar. And now the Vijasma and the Libtard are shooting at us, so now we have to smoke and try to survive and get fires on Libtard. But then we still have to keep pushing the Holland because he's stuck in the bottom of the map, and I still have a radar left. So it's like, and you see there we got Witherer, so like 10 fires, 166k already getting Witherer, pretty cool. It's the combination of the torps and the decent fire starting on Svea that really gives you those perma fires. We're dodging airstrikes, and it's like the difference is, in a lot of ships we would just resign ourselves to death, and you see there how being small is such a big asset, right? And we're getting, of course, cross torp. Like, this is how I would say about half of my Svea games are this sweaty or more sweaty. Now, this one is no longer sweaty because our team has turbo thrown it. Our sub literally went AFK for 6 minutes to cap C. Pretty amazing. Base XP warrior, as always. Most sub players. So, it's no longer sweaty, but it was extremely sweaty there for about 4 to 6 minutes. And I would say that my experience in Svea is about 40% of games are incredibly boring. About 50% of games are unbelievably sweat fiestas. And then like there's maybe 10% of games that are like maybe like a nice little mix. But overall, it's about half and half. Like you are sweating your cock and balls off playing the ship, or you're bored out of your mind. And you just have to be okay with that if you're going to consider playing the Svea. Now, maybe you're one of those people who like loves playing Lighthouse Henry, so like you don't mind being AFK on a flank for literally the entire duration of the game. And so you can just like do that. So the game is over. And now what are we doing? Well, we're just trying to secure the moral victory, which is killing this loser Holland that went AFK for 10 years to torp our BBs. So there's nothing we can do to win. But I mean, you see the damage on a fat piggy like Holland is pretty decent, and you can see here I don't even have the speed boost up, right? And these guys are all shooting at me at what Vijasma's like 13 km, Libtard 16 or so, and and we're just like still dodging a lot of damage, and it's not necessarily because I'm super maneuverable, because without the speed boost, you got good maneuverability but nothing like truly incredible. But you're so tiny, man. You're so tiny. And this is what I mean when DDs fight back at you. Like this Holland's fighting back with AG, right? Because I'm angled. But he only pens my superstructure. So he just kind of can't like really do meaningful damage to me. Like he doesn't have the ability to really damage me at all because he doesn't pen me anywhere. And this is a big difference between like, yeah, some, light cruisers. I guess we can call this a light cruiser. A lot of them, you see there, we're just so tiny they don't hit us. Like this guy's shooting, this libtard's aiming well. He's just not fucking hitting me because I'm so small, right? Um, but we're just running at the Holland to get the kill. I mean, the game's totally over. We're sending out torps. It literally doesn't matter anymore. Here you see like weird DD plays where they stop shooting to then shoot again when they're dead, no matter what. Um, so we get the kill on the Holland. Yay, whoopee for me. So talented, so amazing, such high game impact. Um, the points are reversed, by the way. We're not actually winning by 300. In case you're wondering, why is this guy selling by throwing his ship away? The points are reversed. So the game's over. That guy. But you see there, he barely clipped us and got us with overpens, right? Um, it's kind of wild. Like it's kind of wild. 2.8 million potential tanked, and we only got airstruck about 3 or 4 times. So over 2 million real potential tanked in Svea, and this happens a lot, dude. My Not only is my average potential unreasonably high in this ship, like close to 1 million, but the reason why it's even that quote unquote low in my Svea is because of the boredom games that I've discussed where nobody even shoots at you because nothing's going on. we, we had 2 torps for a double permaflood. Padding the stats, baby. Padding the stats. And I want to be clear, I love these kind of Svea games. Oh, we hit him on Vajasma, my bad. Amazing. I love these kind of Svea games. I don't like the loss where my teammates totally sold me out and threw a completely free win game. I don't like that part. But I love these hyper sweat games. I love sweaty ships that are sweaty in the type of like consumable position dodging spam way that Svea is sweaty. I love them. It's why I love Utrecht. I play that ship almost exclusively open water spamming at people trying to dodge damage. You'll never catch me sitting on a fucking rock in that ship for 5 minutes at a time. It's the same reason I love Svea, why I open water in a lot, why I always try to push the cap and fight DDs, because I love sweaty cruisers. I love them. Are they like good? Not really. I mean, if you look at, say NA leaderboards in Svea and have statistical literacy, it's pretty clear that the Svea isn't super powerful. There's some people who do very, very well in it, but if you actually look at the leaderboards, and don't just look at the average win rate in, like, say, NA, if you look at the average win rate, it's heavily inflated by the ship being new. But if you actually go to the leaderboard and see what the top players are doing in Svea, it's actually pretty underwhelming. Um, but I do love it. And the one downside that I have with this ship is just that there's too many boredom games. And that's, mostly just down to how this game plays, how blowouts happen. You have limited gun range. It's difficult to find an impact when the Reds sprint away. You can get some impact when the Reds push you, right? But and that's why, a ship like Utrecht is more fun for me because it's easier to sweat in it because you're open watering uh, all the time. So you're inherently sweating more consistently. I mean, somebody, can I please have some motherfucking help? Our sub, who is last alive, isn't like above people who died minutes ago, which is insane with how inflated sub XP is. Um, there was really, I mean, nothing we could do there. But this is the kind of sweat that I love. These games, about half of my Svea games are this sweaty, and I love it. I fucking love it, dude. But I gotta say, those other half of the games where I'm like getting 60 to 80k damage, and the thing is, you still end up with like MVP a lot, right? Like I have so many games in Svea where I have 0 kills, okay? 0 kills, 75,000 damage, and I'm MVP. Why? Because I radared 4 destroyers and got 45,000 DD damage. But, like, I mean, I'm coping thinking that I had a fun game. Because I'm like, I was MVP. I was MVP. I did so good. Yeah, I was bored out of my fucking mind. Right? What you want in Svea is when, like, it's all happening. DDs are pushing you, you know, you're dodging BB salvos, you're dodging cross torps, you're radaring, you're healing, you're smoking, you're torping. When all of it's happening at the same time, the ship is so fucking sweaty and fun in a sweaty way. But if you play the game like I do, maybe you have a more stable play style of less aggression. And so the boring games don't feel as boring for you, and you don't love the sweaty games as much as I do, then, like, it's just a really good ship. I mean, it's just a really good cruiser. It's not like insane. And again, statistically, that is proven if you look at leaderboards, but it's insane in certain situations. It's insane in high DD count games. It's insane in high BB count games. Especially without plane spawning, without planes, no planes and no subs. Like I said, you suffer a bit less to subs than most cruisers because of the stealth radar and ASW planes. But no sub, no CV, high DD count, high BB count games, or it's just like, man, you just fuck everything up in this ship. You just start fires and floods on BBs. You fuck with DDs, they never get to cap. Cruisers try to play positionally. You actually just out trade them open water. There's a lot of things you can do in the Svea. And I would say, overall, Austin for Steel is certainly more fun. Svea is probably like maybe my second pick these days. Second cruiser pick for Steel. I think Austin's still number one because Austin is strong. It's not a meme ship. Um, but Svea is a bit more fun than like Plymouth and Stalin. And it's sweaty in a way that I enjoy, and it's very good. I mean, it is just very good. There's always something you can do to impact the game, right? Yeah, let's hop back in the port. All right. We'll start with equipment, and I'd say there's basically exactly one choice on the Svea for equipment, and that is, do you run radar or engine boost? Um, I'm not going to go so far as to say that engine boost mod is objectively correct, but I do think it's kind of overall way better. Basically, when you run radar mod, your radar will go from 16.5 with, the full build to 20 seconds. So you get a 3.5 second longer duration radar. Your reload is 4 seconds. So obviously, this quite depends on the timing. I would argue there's almost zero value to radar mod on Svea. And the reason I would argue that is with a 4 second reload, the way this buggy piece of shit game works, you don't get to shoot the second you radar. So if you're spotted and you radar a DD, typically you won't get to actually shoot your guns until you've seen that DD for about 2 seconds. So you're shooting at, say, second 2, at second 6, at second 10, at second 14, at second 18. So in like a perfect situation where those numbers I just listed are when you're shooting with the radar, then you can do the math. You shot at second 18, you got one extra salvo off with the radar if you ran radar mod in slot 2. However, a lot of the time this game is a buggy piece of shit, and you radar, and your old radar doesn't let you shoot somebody for 3 or 4 seconds. So you shoot at, say, second 4, at second 8, at second 12, at second 16, at second 20. Do you see what I'm getting at? Like, there are situations if you run radar mod that you'll get an extra shot off, right? There are situations where you will not get an extra shot off. So you don't reliably get one extra salvo onto DDs when you radar them if you run radar mod. That's the main takeaway. And then the more important takeaway is that your speed boost is so much of your survivability. You're pretty survivable open water even without it, but this 30% speed boost, and remember when you run the speed boost mod, you get an extra 25 seconds of it. Um, I just think it's way too much survivability to give up for a radar that is going to maybe let you shoot one extra salvo on a DD, right? If that makes sense. But you definitely want aiming, prop, concealment, reload, 100% reload. The range is not amazing, but like given your shell arcs, how you kind of want to play in Svea, you're not getting really any value by running range. And then I would say there's exactly really one option on your captain. Now, basically the option is your last 4 point skill. So you definitely, want last stand, you want a 2 point skill, whether you want an extra 10%, radar, speed boost, up to you. Your fire chance is 11%. So by taking Demo Expert, you are increasing your fires per minute by about 9%. Demo Expert is a very valid 2 point skill. This is like the utility build, right? You're definitely going to run Last Stand, AR, Survivability, Concealment, and Superintendent. I think you run these no matter what. Um, and then it's more of, do you want to build into, say, utility, which is why I'm running consumable specialists and enhancements, or do you want to build into like DPM and damage output or something? You can do that, obviously, but then you basically, no matter how you choose to build it, whatever, you will have 4 points left over. And those extra 4 points on Svea are kind of interesting to me. There's very few cruisers, I think, that have so many options. Um, well, number one, top grade gunner on Svea is like not good overall, I would say. But when you radar DDs, you will reload 10% faster. Now, like I said during the discussion about radar mod, are you really getting an extra salvo off on DDs when you radar them with top grade gunner? In my opinion, not really ever. With a 10% reload buff, like that's not actually giving you extra damage on DDs, if that makes sense. And then your concealment is so good, right? It's half of your total gun range, slightly more. So like you're not really ever getting value out of top grade gunner. I would recommend Outnumbered is actually like a mega skill on Svea. Um, because you have that limited gun range, you're much more likely to take advantage of Outnumbered. And because you're so good at solo holding a flank, you're more likely to be solo. So Outnumbered on Svea is, I almost never recommend Outnumber. Um, Castilla is like one of the few cruisers I recommend it on, but on Svea, I would say Outnumbered is quite a good skill. However, with that said, I just won't really be caught dead playing a utility cruiser in randoms without 4 point AA skill. Especially on a ship like Svea, like one ASW airstrike flying over your smoke, and now you have no gap between your smokes, right? One CV squadron dropping you once, all of a sudden your radar reloads in 30 seconds. Like Svea probably is the best candidate in the game for the 4 point AA skill, in my opinion, for a couple of reasons. Well, number one, you have so many high game impact consumables, short burst smoke, short reload radar, 30% speed boost. But then also, you have long range anti air. Now, the AA isn't good, right? It's not necessarily good anti air, but it's 6.9. So the longer the range your anti-air is on cruisers and battleships, the more you can make use of the 2 point and the 4 point AA skills. Because planes, every time they go over you, are in your range for an extra, 20% duration time, right? So it's the combination of one, there's really only one other viable skill, which would be Outnumbered, which, the way I personally play Svea, I don't typically value Outnumbered that much because I'm not typically like in Narnia holding a flank. I'm typically kind of like running it down with my DDs. But Outnumbered is a great skill. But really that 4 point AA skill is just like, dude, I mean, it's such a fucking mega skill on a ship with 1 minute reloading radar. Like, there are many situations in Svea where I've radared 30 seconds apart like three times in a row. because you're in a game with like Utrecht, Golden Lion, a sub is on your flank, so enemy BBs are airdropping the sub, and there's a CV. Like playing, it's World of Warplanes, boys. It's World of fucking Warplanes these days. So like the 4 AA skill on a ship with this much utility is god fucking tier. This honestly might be like the best ship in the game for 4 AA skill, other than like maybe Austin. So that would be my recommendation. And now we can look at the armor and see that it is just bafflingly good, right? I mean, like, you have a bit of 25 quote unquote upper belt, but like, really, is it even upper belt? I mean, this is mostly, your. I don't know. You get what I'm saying? Like, the ship is incredibly small, too. It's about the size of the Elbing. Elbing is a giant ship by destroyer standards. By cruiser standards, Elbing is not big at all, right? So when you go perfectly bowing in Svea, I mean, that's your citadel, right? You're shooting a destroyer bow and trying to hit like a 1 pixel high citadel. So, yeah, you could get unlucky in Svea and angle up like this, right? This lets you shoot all your guns. You could angle up like this. They could like theoretically snipe the bow. I can tell you right now in 50, 60 games in the ship, it virtually never happens. Yes, cruiser moments happen every now and then, right? A shell hits you like in the ass traveling in like this. Physically can't even hit your citadel and you get citadel. Cruiser moments happen, but 30 millimeter deck. Most of your side plating will bounce 406s, 25 nose and ass, but the nose and ass are very small, of course. But then there is the one random weakness, which is like I said, that 35 millimeter citadel deck. And that is making ships like Shikishima, Satsuma, and Incomp nightmare fuel for this thing because they can just like randomly blow you the fuck up, right? I mean, there's no meaningful armor, so like an Incomp shell comes in, a Satsuma shell comes in, and just like plunges in and just like hits you in the upper belt, overmatches you, citadels you through the deck, right? You're kiting away, a random ass BB shell hits any of this shit, dude, any of this shit, and it citadels you. And then those ships do half your HP with one sit, right? So pretty horrific. And then obviously 70 millimeters, for what is it, for 19, 420s and up will citadel you with HE. All 420s and up will citadel you with HE. And then BB sap. And actually, not just BB sap. There are a couple of oddball ships in this game. Michelangelo. Michelangelo pens 82. So in Svea, I mean, there's other ones like Colbert and Smolensk, right? But in Svea, since we're talking about Svea, yeah, that citadels you, right? So that's something you have to be kind of weirdly concerned about. Um, that 305 plus millimeter sap does citadel you, which is kind of weird. Almost never comes into play, but every now and then there's a Michelangelo in your game, and you have to keep that in mind. That like you could randomly get death struck by Michelangelo sap if you're unlucky. Um, but overall, the idea that this ship is not survivable is just such a cope, dude. The speed, the slimness, how small it is overall, the armor layout, the short burst smoke, the improved. I don't think we hovered over it, but this is what I mean by the improved rate of healing. Uh, the Svea heal is a 1% per second heal, which is typically only found on destroyers like the Daring and the Ragnar and these kind of ships. BBs and cruisers normally heal at a rate of 0.5% per second. So does it really like make that big of a difference? Because you're not getting a ton of HP back. It's not like a huge mega ability, but it does mean that pre-healing when damage is coming in is a little bit more viable, right? It's easier to abuse adrenaline rush, right? So like if you're on 10,000 HP and with these heals you can recover like 77,000, you're tempted to rip the 7,000 heal to get up to 17,000 HP, right? But because you can recover it all in 14 seconds, which is like you can heal at the drop of a hat, It does kind of let you abuse a bit of adrenaline rush. I mean, not a whole lot, but it's a nice little asset, you know, not some kind of crazy mega skill, but because you can like basically heal as people shoot at you, and almost the whole heal rips through, right? So, uh, that is the Svea. It's a really good ship. I love the sweaty games. Unfortunately, too many games are boring, but all of that said, I think still it's probably very worth getting for steel. Especially if you're, you know, maybe a more, I don't want to say higher skill player, but like, I mean, I will say if you're dog shit, this ship will suck. Like, there are ships that are good if you're dog shit, right? But, um, see, it won't be good if you're shit. That's for sure. But it can be a lot of fun. It's a combination of fun and boring. Um, but I still enjoy playing it just because when you get those super sweaty games, it's a hell of a good time. That'll do it. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.